Not yet. I'm optimistic. I told you, I thought this was going to be a short meeting. We all set? Good. Frank, good? Eileen, you're good?
I am good, yep.
Christine, yes? Medfield TV, how we doing? All systems go. Everybody out in the audience ready to get started here? No, 20 minutes late? Yes? All right. Well, welcome to the March 7th Medfield Board of Selectmen meeting. The meeting will be held in a hybrid format. The Board of Selectmen will attend in person, and members of the public may attend in person. And tonight, many of them have. In addition, members of the public who wish to participate via Zoom may do so by going onto the town website, downloading the Board of Selectmen agenda for tonight, and there's a link there at the top of the agenda if you want to join by Zoom. The other thing is, for everybody that's present here tonight, this is being live recorded and streamed by Medfield TV, so you should be aware of that. If you are going to speak, if you're a main speaker for anything, we're going to ask you to use the podium there, because the feedback from people who are actually monitoring this through Medfield TV or on Zoom say the acoustics with that microphone is better than the microphone, which is almost always close to Bill Massaro. That is the Bill Massaro microphone there. If you are speaking and you don't feel that you need to be compelled to get up to the podium and would like to speak from your seat, please grab that microphone. It doesn't amplify your voice, so it doesn't seem like it's working. It's not for us, it's for the audio feed for the broadcast. So, and again, if you're speaking, we'd ask you to just identify yourself and your address before you get started. So to begin, we'd just like to take a moment of appreciation for our troops serving across the world and in defense of our country. Thank you. Okay, we have a few appointments. First one is Board of Health quarterly update. So who do we have here to speak? Steve.
Hi there. Name is Stephen Resch. I'm the chair of the Board of Health, and I've got some other representatives here with me today. I'm actually not going to be giving most of the presentation today. I just wanted to highlight that, as you know, that Board of Health covers a wide array of responsibilities which you might categorize as environmental health and public health nursing, or more clinical type health. And so all the environmental health, the food, the animals, the camps, pools, septic, stormwater, all those things are really mainly under the purview of our contracted health agent. And then the public health nursing part, which is really clinical services, vaccinations, blood pressure screening, emergency preparedness, working with other towns and on medical resource, medical reserve corps and so forth, is public health nursing. And that's Brenda Healy, who will be has been here now for a little over a year. And the Board of Health has been super excited about that. I think I've mentioned that at the last time I was here as well. But now we've got sort of a year under our belt, and a lot has been accomplished. I think some of the things that we were hoping to accomplish when we were pushing for the idea of bringing public health nursing in-house instead of continuing to be a contracted service has come true, has come to fruition. Some of the highlights I just wanted to point out, and you'll probably see these sort of reiterated or let's say reinforced in Brenda's presentation. But most importantly, I think this significantly, we've been able to increase the scope and level or depth of public health services to Medfield residents. We've got regular health clinics going on at multiple locations with well over 1,000 clients served in the past year. Infrastructure and personnel now we have available and in use to administer vaccinations. We've got much greater visibility and control over our epidemiological data. That has to do with public health reporting. COVID cases is what everybody's familiar with, but it's actually broader than that. And we really struggled during the heart of the pandemic. As a contracted service, we really struggled to, get the level of detail and visibility of the information that's held in a state database for our town, and to make use of that data to make decisions when we had contracted services. But now we have much more direct access to that data. So, hopefully we won't have other pandemics, but should we have other pandemics, we're certainly in a much better place in terms of monitoring it within Medfield. And then I also wanted to stress that you'll see the theme of a much increased engagement and coordination with neighboring communities. That's partly through a shared services grant that we have, but because we now have Brenda every day, at the town hall, we have an anchor, a focal point that can coordinate with all these other towns and really make use of some of these neighborhood or regional resources. And it's not just the shared services, but we also, another part of that is the Regional Medical Reserves Corps, which is basically clinicians who are available to volunteer their services in the case of emergency or and so forth. And that's something that you try and coordinate regionally so that you're prepared in the case that you have emergencies that need emergency response, which could be pandemics, but they can also be natural disasters or those kinds of things that you want to be ready for. And yet, lastly, it's really enabled Medfield to access resources and carry out health enhancing initiatives that we really didn't have the bandwidth or the personnel to take on those things before. But Brenda's been very busy applying for grants for all kinds of things, which I'm sure she'll tell you about. And vaccine infrastructure is an example. CPR training equipment like the dummies that you practice on is another example. Also, AEDs, the defibrillators, that's another big project we have going to put defibrillators in basically at the ballparks, at the sports fields. So we're hoping to do that this year, and I think it seems as though we've acquired the funds to do that. They haven't quite flowed yet, but I think that's happening. And we've been coordinating with the fire department to implement that. So I think that's another highlight. And then lastly, just, I think I've already said it several times, but the idea of emergency preparedness is something that, we didn't really have a point person for before, but now we do. So that's sort of a way of introduction to Brenda.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you very much for having me here and the Board of Health here. And I just want to first say I've had a wonderful year and 4 months and 2 days. My background is mostly in critical care, so this is a very different position for me, but it's just as exciting and just as thrilling as when I was a new nurse. So I enjoy it very much. One of the things I did do with this presentation is I worked with the Academic Public Health Corps, which is public health students in Boston going to school, and I had one junior and one freshman helping me with this. And I just want to give a little shout out to them, Teresa and Annie, and thank them for helping me. It was a little difficult for them to find transportation to Medfield tonight. Public health nursing. Next slide, please. What we're going to there's 3 little phases. What is public health nursing in Medfield, and what it has impacted. Next slide, please. What is public health nursing? The American Public Health Association It's promoting, protecting the health and populations using knowledge of nursing, social, and public health sciences. It's based on evidence-based practice, which is when we take scientific evidence, turn it into how we can make something better. You see it a lot in clinical practice, in social work practice, any type of healthcare now is all evidence-based. And it just gives us the evidence to show why what we're doing works. And in public health, improving population health, extending outcomes beyond what we think, and effective guidelines and protocols are all based on evidence-based nursing. One of the first protocols I wrote when I came, which is what is my job description, was based on evidence-based practice, and that was from our human resource department who wrote that job description up. Then we get to the good stuff. What is public health nursing in Medfield? Basically, it is primary care to individuals, families, and members of a vulnerable population or a high-risk group. Examples of that can be vaccine clinics, blood pressure clinics, COVID-19 testing, and education. Every day, I'm educating at least 2 or 3 people, even if it's just saying, you know, how are you? Don't bend down and pick that box up that way. Bend your knees. And then, you know, it's just keeping our bodies in shape, and my coworkers to the people of the community. They see me come in with my blood pressure cuff, and I see a lot of people hide their arms behind their backs here. Within the community, I've been tracking COVID-19 and other diseases since the day I came. We use a system called Maven. Maven is an electronic health system that when you go and you have any type of blood testing or PCR testing, if it's one of the state dedicated disease surveillance diseases, I will be notified right from the lab. We'll use COVID as an example. You get a positive COVID test, I come in the morning, I log on to Maven, you live in Medfield, I'm going to have your name looking at me on the screen with your telephone number. And at one point, we were calling everyone, getting your contact tracing. We are still calling people in Medfield, or we're texting them the guidelines. The older population still really appreciate someone checking in on them and saying, gee, 'cause I'm okay, or how many days do I have to wear that mask? And where can I get some masks? Or how can I get some tests? And I do have access to both in my office. An example of some of the diseases that I have followed and numbers that we have followed over 1 year, 365 days. I will run over quickly for you. Varroa, which is a cause of Lyme, we've had 1 this year. Campylobacteriasis, which is the most common cause of diarrhea, we had 4 in the town. Dengue fever, which is from mosquitoes, was from someone who traveled outside of the United States and arrived back to Logan Airport, but lived in Medfield. Group B strep, we had 1. Hepatitis B and C, we had 1 of each. We had many Lyme, 46 cases of Lyme in Medfield this year. COVID-19, 2,363, and that's up till today. Pertussis, we had 2. Salmonella, we had 2. TB, 7. And varicella, or chickenpox virus, we had 3 in 1 year. So even without the COVID, there's still enough disease processes that we call everyone, we work with them, we set people up with TB, with the free TB clinics. Most of them are people who have traveled out of the United States and are moving here from other countries. There's a lot of barriers that they have to meet, and we can get them free testing, free appointments, transportation. I can arrange all of that with state help from the state. And we follow these people until they are safe and we know they're not contagious. So I've followed someone since 2019. I've only followed him for a year, but he's been in and out of the system since 2019. So it's a very important part of keeping our community safe. Now to something not so scary. I have 1,223 people that come follow me around during the course of the week for a blood pressure check. Yeah, please. I started out at the Council of Aging with one gentleman telling me his wife had just passed away and he was very upset. I now see 40 of them on a Wednesday between 9 and 11:30. And now we have kind of competitions. Who's cutting out the sodium? And you have the men's table and the women's table, and they compete back and forth. And I'm like, I can't tell you what her blood pressure is. She can, but I can't. So, but it's a nice, a nice camaraderie. I'm at Tilden Village every Tuesday from 9 to 11. Every other Tuesday, I stay till 11:30, and we just have a little educational chat on whatever the residents would like to talk about. I started at Wilkins Glen in February, and I have 2 clients, exactly how I started out at Tilden Village. And the townhouse, I have people, if I don't, last Tuesday when we had the snow start, I had people waiting at the townhouse at 11 o'clock. They were saying, I knew you'd be here by then. And they wanted their blood pressure checked. I give them out cards, and they take them to the doctor and bring them back and forth. So I call them my blood pressure followers, which is nice. It's nice. And I have picked up a few irregular heartbeats and rhythms that we've called the doctor, and a couple of them now have pacemakers. So it's, not going to always happen, but occasionally you do pick that person up and you can prevent something. Again, the vaccinations that we started, I had to start by getting approved by the vaccine unit. I had to apply for Medicare, Medicaid, and third-party insurances. I had to be completely approved. They had to come out and inspect me. They're coming out again on my year anniversary, which is March 23rd. And I can do under 19 for most immunizations free of charge. COVID-19, for adults as well. We will be providing influenza vaccines this year for all members of the community. We're planning on having a health fair at the COA, probably in October. We're applying for a grant, and my future goals is to be able to offer the shingles vaccine at some point. It's a very expensive vaccine that most seniors can't afford, and insurance does not always cover. So if we can, that's kind of get a grant to pay for that, it would be wonderful. I vaccinated 174 COVID-19 boosters since January of this year. The other thing is I communicate with assisted living facilities in town. I communicate frequently with Kathy, with the schools, the preschools I've worked closely with, and tracking flu, tracking respiratory illness. RSV was a big one this year with the preschools. And just, if they need something, they feel free to call me and ask, who do I get a hold of? We'll either call the epidemiologist in Boston, or I'll give them the number and they'll call themselves. So it's a good, working with families and the police and the fire and other facilities around town. And those are the people up on the board that I talk to frequently. And I do call physicians for some of my blood pressure people if they say, I've been trying to get a hold of the doctor, they're not calling me back. Sometimes it just takes a fiery redhead to say, hey, call this person back. You can skip the next one. We've done that. CPR, AEDs, and naloxone training are very important. Passion of mine. We just discussed earlier that we're gonna get the 4 AEDs. I'm doing train the trainer course in April, so we can start to train other members of the community to be trainers, not just in CPR, but help me train other people in the community. Our goal is to be a heart-safe community. It's going to take a while. It's going to have to be patient. You need a high percentage of your community to be CPR trained. It does not have to be American Heart, but they do have to have some type of training. And kind of talking with Sarah, the COA, I'd like to do some AED training and basic CPR with some of the seniors during the day as well on Wednesday. I brought a AED there about 2 months ago, and just watching the seniors hear it. They said, we've never heard an AED before. They say it's easy, but we never heard the voice. And just listening to it was all they needed. So that was nice. And I think every building, my personal thing, should have Narcan in them. It's not necessarily the people who work in the building or the people, it might be someone coming through town. It might be someone's brother. We don't know. We don't know these people that may need it. I'm working in many facilities. I've known doctors, lawyers, everyone of every gender, every age, every population that might need Narcan once in a while. And the other, hoarding, abuse, neglect, and other community needs is 2 slides ahead. 3, one more. That I work very closely with Kathy McDonald and the outreach. We're always calling each other. We're always calling the social worker over at the Coalition of Aging. And just, it's almost like we're seeing the same people in the community. We just really intercollaboratively are working well together. And I think that's also very important, to be able to not work within your department, but to work with others within your reach. We haven't seen a lot of neglect or abuse that we know of, but I'm sure it's out there, and with the times getting a little tougher, with some benefits being taken away and not available, we just have to keep our eyes open for our neighbors. And, and then anyone can at any time ever leave me a message on my machine. I don't even need to know who you are, and we will look at it. I do a lot of the emergency management that I'm starting now. I'm going to Virginia next week to do an MRC leadership training. Medfield has been part of MRC in the past, but it's just never really taken off from my research. It's both medical and non-medical members of the community that are trained through state money. We get money to do this. And you train your community members to be able to come together in a time of an emergency or a vaccine clinic or one of the daycares has a water flood and they have to get all the kids out in a minute. We could go over there and help them. And it's just, you learn the emergency management system language. So you can work with the fire department, you know what they're saying. The MRC is at the bottom of the tier, but it's also a very important piece. In a big disaster, one of my roles would be to set up a mortuary. To notify the public, to set up quarantine, some place of isolation and quarantine, kind of things we've just been through, but do it from the beginning so you have a point person. Working with fire, working with DPH, working with FLEP on the emergency preparedness, people from the state of Mass. And I go to meetings with them all the time now. And these emergency management guidelines, I actually took right out of Chief Jericho's emergency management preparedness plan and made it our Board of Health plan.
That works.
Yeah. Let's see. I'll go to grants now. Yeah. And like anything in municipality that I'm learning, we need money. And if we can get money without having to come up here and ask you people or Christine or Frank to find me some, I'm better off. They've never said no, but so I've gotten quite a few grants that I've applied for. I got an MRC grant for $10,000 that will help us and the 10 other communities that we are now married to as an MRC, and we're called Middle Fork MRC. It's not Medfield MRC, it's Middle Fork. And it is Sherburne, Medfield, Dover, Hopkinton, to know them off the top of my head, Framingham, Halston, and together we will form one large MRC so we can tap into it if we need a lot of people, or you can just do your own community. And I got a $10,000 grant to start that up. Cambridge Health Alliance gave us money to buy iPads for our vaccine clinics. We use color, so you can have people sign up at the time if they are walk-ins. I got a grant to go to this next week in Virginia, and I got an emergency preparedness from the state. DPH offered me a scholarship to go to Atlanta for emergency preparedness next month. And we got $5,000 that we got from Metro West to help me start the clinics. It's what we bought all of our syringes with and anything that the state didn't supply us. So it really helped, and we still have some money left over from that. I told you about the vaccines with Council of Aging. That's a $50,000 grant. And if we can get that, then hopefully we can offer more. Does anyone have any questions?
I do have a couple. So when you gave the number for the COVID count, is that individual people or the same person maybe multiple times?
Individual cases. So if
Okay.
it's the same person multiple times, they've gotten it multiple times.
And so do they count as one or do they count as multiple in the 2,000?
Multiple times.
Okay. And then you talked about, was it the Heart Ready or Heart?
Heart Safe Community.
How long does a certification training last? So you have to do it annually, biannually? Every 2 years? Okay. And where are we at? I'm curious. Are we
On the Heart Saver?
Yeah.
We just started it.
Okay.
I just printed the application out to
Okay.
find out what we had to do.
Okay. I've
And
seen
it-
those around town, so that's why I'm
And
like,
like the first thing I want to do is pull the census and see how many healthcare providers we have. Because most of them are already certified.
Yeah.
So we may hit the first tier for the first year, right off the bat. So you just have to keep moving up and up.
All right, that's good education. I've seen those
Yeah.
around in other towns, and I always
Yes.
wondered what it was, so now I
Yep.
know what that sign means.
Yeah, it means that you have, I think it's 89% of your community knows how to do CPR.
Excellent. So much of the information you just shared I found extremely helpful. I had no idea just how many, like, for example, the various locations you go to on a weekly basis just for the the blood pressure checks. Like, that's, hey, Brenda, you're like the
I love
stealth.
it.
You're
Yeah,
gonna,
I do like it. I like it a lot. It's a puzzle, and people probably think I'm nuts, but it's like, I thought I was on the downside.
well, I appreciate everything you shared. Thank you.
No, I enjoy it. I'm a nurse.
That's awesome. Thank you.
So thank you very much.
We're not done yet.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I did have a couple questions. I think you said that there was 2,000 cases of COVID, was the number that I think I heard you say.
Yes,
And is that in the last 12 months, or is that just the 2 months of this current year?
January to now.
2 months worth, running 1,000 cases a month.
No, we had a lot. Well, I'm sorry. It was December. December to today.
Wow.
No, that's not right. It's like, that's a cumulative number.
No, 12 months. That's 12 months. That's 12 months.
12 months.
That's 12 months. Sorry, that's 12 months. The rest of it was January to now. COVID's 12 months.
So it's really exciting to me to hear
Yeah, I'm sorry.
that you have access to so much data.
Yes.
That's great.
Yeah.
We had 2,000 cases in the last month. We should be
Yeah, we're still in
meeting
quarantine.
here.
I'll put my,
Yeah, put it back.
Don't do that.
No.
and then I think the other figure I heard you say was strep throat. I thought you said just one.
One.
That's
I
pretty
can't
good.
believe that we, what
That's
kind of
what's
time?
been reported. Now,
Yeah, so
reported.
I would say that's not accurate.
it's probably not, that's what's
Yeah.
reported on the Maven
Kathy's seen more
system.
than that.
I know she has seen more than that.
Yeah.
And we always back and forth data, like flu season. You always had more than I did. And that's because they went and they were tested, like Needham has a machine that you can test for COVID, flu, and strep on, but it's not recorded with the state. Mine are always state figures.
And strep isn't a reportable
No,
thing,
it's not.
so that's why that number's not accurate. Pediatricians aren't calling in on strep.
Ah, okay.
This is strep B. Strep, not strep A, strep B.
Okay.
So I just don't think that people tell other people that they're doing a good job often enough, and so I just will share with you that I heard very good reports about what you are doing from the people at the Council on Aging and how appreciative they are for what you've been doing, so thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah,
That's it for me.
they're kind of my friends now.
Good.
I'd certainly echo that, and more generally for the Board of Health. It's been a challenging several years, and the fact that the breadth of what you covered here today is a bunch of things I hadn't even really thought much about, so we appreciate that. Had two comments. One, I was glad you asked a question about the safe communities, because that at least doesn't make me feel bad. I didn't have a clue about any of that going on, so that's because it just started. Another one is in looking for that first tier, the other place you might check with is the Boy Scout troops. The Bob Bond, for a number of years, is, I don't know if he's still doing, he did this year, but I know he was running CPR training for the Boy Scouts, so
Oh, good.
that might be yet another source of some
Yeah.
already qualified people.
Already
with that
qualified, yeah.
statistic. Yeah.
And a lot of the sports teams now are
The school are doing all the
School.
coaches.
in 10th grade. Do they still do it in 10th grade?
That's it.
Really? That's
Yeah.
good.
And then I had one question, and it's good Kathy's here too. In my way of oversimplifying the world, I kind of think of Medfield Outreach as the people who are dealing with sort of the mental health, social issues, where Board of Health a little more, maybe on the infectious disease, that kind of stuff. I'm just curious whether that's an accurate division, or maybe a better question is, how do the two of you come together to, how do you work together? Because it's just not apparent.
I think that's a great question. I think that really lends itself to this discussion about this health and human service model.
Could you use the microphone, because then the people at home can hear what you're saying, which is important.
Forgot. Kathy McDonald, Director of Medfield Outreach. The question was, how do we work? Does Medfield Outreach work collaboratively with other agencies who are also monitoring health or any sort of health-related data? And the answer is, as we've been pivoting towards this collaborative health and human service model, we're doing so more and more. We were doing it as the need arose with specific clients or community residents, and now we're doing it just on a regular basis as well, with monthly meetings, collaborative meetings with department heads from what we would consider the social service sort of partnerships. Board of Health is represented by Brenda, but you all have double gigs, right? You're all full-time workers and on the Board of Health. And so we can look to work more preventatively and just more routinely, as well as ad hoc when the need comes up with specific clients. So we overlap, and then it's really good that we have this partnership, because then we're not duplicating services. If you have a family in need, we're sort of tiering and triaging who needs to do what, so that our resources aren't duplicated and we can meet as many people's needs as possible and figure out who's the best positioned with a skill set or with their resources to take care of whatever the need is. And sometimes a blood pressure check engages in a discussion with an individual who then it becomes obvious that they're out struggling maybe with a mental health or other things, and so then we swoop in or get phone calls and such.
And at Council of Aging, every Wednesday afternoon, I sit down with the two women there, and we'll go over, oh, did you know so-and-so fell last week at home?
Oh, that's good.
Or I called this client that had a knee replacement, and this is how they're doing. We'll go over several clients. It's something I started with them. And we go back and forth, and Kathy and I and Mia, and we all do it. Kathy Thompson and I do it with the vaccinating a few of the kids for school. So we, I think, work very well intercollaboratively. There's no hesitation to call each other.
Mm-hmm. Okay. You all been listening. Are there any questions from the audience? Anything people want to ask? Okay.
Isn't it nice that we talked about something other than just COVID?
Yeah.
And from the school perspective, we have lots of kids coming in from out of the country now that we would have to keep out of school, because we have very few primary care pediatric providers that are taking new clients in Medfield, in particular clients that have maybe Mass Health or no insurance. So it's been great that, you can just call Brenda and she'll provide all the vaccines, and we have to walk for a kid, wait for a kid to have a physical for a little bit. But at least we can let them get into school knowing they're fully immunized, and we don't have to put certainly anybody at risk. Mm-hmm. So that's been a really nice partnership with the schools.
Well, we're glad you're all here. So.
I might even learn some Spanish.
Love having a public health nurse.
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Brenda.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Our second item is the Board of Water and Sewage request for ARPA application to Norfolk County for $370,000 for the replacement of the UV system at the wastewater treatment plant. Bill, do we have a speaker? Is it Christine or?
Bill Harvey's here.
Oh, okay.
Thank you,
I
guys.
actually thought I was supporting Kathy.
Oh, no, it's up to you.
That I was supporting Castamo, so.
It'll be electronic.
Okay. So this application is for replacement of a piece of capital equipment at the wastewater treatment plant. It's considered a tertiary treatment, which is primary, secondary, tertiary, and the method uses ultraviolet light. It broadcasts at a certain frequency, about 260 nanometers of light, and it does virus and bacteria kill. So it's essentially one of the last, if not, I believe, the last major treatment step in the water treatment plant. The current system's about 20 to 21 years old. We've had to do some replacements of the parts, and it's starting to get to the end of its useful life. The condition of it was noted at a US EPA visit that we had earlier this year. We've replaced the parts to bring it up to its performance standard. We've also, at the same time, been notified that the vendor is no longer going to be supporting this product. It's so old, so we probably bought it some period along its life, and then we added our 20 years on it. So it's reasonable that equipment manufacturers eventually do sunset the support of older generation equipment. So this would be something that, if it wasn't funded through this grant, we would have to dig into retained earnings, or you can call it retained earnings, or it's free cash, and we would have to figure out whether we placed the following year or the year after that, based on the capital and the operating expenses that we have. Fortunately, we have had many of our applications for ARPA funded through the county approved for other items. This particular item, since it goes above a threshold of 250,000, it has to follow federal procurement guidelines. So it's not just the state guidelines that we have to follow for that. What else?
So the initial quote that's in your packet is what we're basing the application on. So obviously, like Bill said, a full procurement process will follow this, but that's sort of the baseline that we're using for the request that we'll make to the county.
So this is a procurement, like this one identifies who's providing it. This is the federal procurement. It's not a competitive procurement, it's a sole source procurement.
It is a competitive procurement, yes.
This is an example of what it would look
Yes,
like.
yes.
And
So
the basis for the grant request, and it's
Correct.
not actually asking for approval to contract with this company yet.
Right, so the next step would be for us to go to the county, ask for the $370,000 to move forward with this project. Following the procurement, they would, we'd be, permitted to spend the money on whatever we choose up buying.
The fact that this proposal came from the existing vendor means that at a minimum, it's compliant with the needs of the infrastructure, so that any other bids that come in from that, we hope, would be financially and technically beneficial. So we have, the baseline is compliant with the needs from what we understand.
So, ironically, I met with Mo last Thursday, and I happen to have a strong background on UVC light. So when we started talking about this, that's what my client does. So I think it's just really, so he was explaining to me, this is the very last process, that after all of filtration, the water will go through this last phase of the UVC light, blasting it so that it will destroy any DNA, RNA in the micro system.
Correct.
So it's, to me, I think, knowing how old our system is, knowing that we can get on the newest kind of end. I think this, if I was reading it correctly, it's like 1,000 watt.
Yes.
So it's very, I reached out to my client this afternoon and said, all
I
right,
don't know
what's
what
your take
1,000
on
watt
this?
means, but it sounds like a lot.
Well, no, understanding what the different, because you can use significantly smaller ones in consumer UVC light applications. So I was intrigued as to what we were using in something like a water waste treatment plant. So my client pinged back and said, no, I am familiar with the system. This
This particular application, it tends to be a slightly broader spectrum than the 254 nanometers as a target. There's a spectrum of that. Other types of ultraviolet light that are used in water treatment are a much more narrower bandwidth. So. And those are more expensive. Those are for industrial applications, for water for injection for pharmaceutical and things like that, where it takes a much more expensive bulb and infrastructure to create that very narrow band of wavelength for that sort of kill, so to speak. Whereas this is slightly more broad spectrum, which you do sort of need. And it's made differently than some of the other ones, because it is in a I'm not going to call it a hazardous, but it could be a more, challenging situation where you have, a wastewater treatment system.
No, so I mean, I'm in support if they can file for this. It makes sense, knowing everything that Mo's got on his plate, trying to juggle some of the mandates I believe that the state has stepped in and is asking us to do. So I hope we can spend some money there.
It certainly makes sense to me. My only question was, I thought we had one already, but you answered that. It's just old.
Yeah, it is. It is.
Replace it then.
Yeah, it's not an if, it's more like a when, and we think like the when now is a win today.
Yep.
So,
Yep, thanks, Bill.
sure.
The only minor question I had was, I homed in on the bulbs, which was $7,000 to replace. I'm not sure, I couldn't tell whether it's multiple bulbs in this, or is it an array of bulbs?
Yes.
So it's not just a single bulb, it said
No.
it was $7,000, and the annual cost was $35,000. It's like, man, these bulbs burn out every 2 months, 2.5 months. It's like, I assume it's some sort of a high-energy bulb that, there was also something about reducing the intensity when you didn't have quite the, so it's not like if you put the power down, the bulb might last longer, but I just found it an interesting, really expensive bulb. That's even more expensive than changing the headlights on my BMW, so it's like, that has been my standard up till now, but,
No ARPA money for you.
well, good, it sounds, unless Christine says that we found other things to do with the other funds.
No, this is a perfect project for
We
that,
need-
and I think exactly what was intended with the ARPA funding in terms of water and sewer infrastructure.
We need a motion or a decision or what?
Yes, we need a motion to vote it because we then have to transfer that to the county to let them know your
Okay.
project.
I would move to support the Board of Water and Sewage request for ARPA application to Norfolk County for $370,000 for the replacement of the UV system at the wastewater treatment plant.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed, motion carries. Do we have to separately vote on having Norfolk County come in with a huge check?
Oh, they'll be coming with a very big check.
Okay. No, I mean like physically.
Oh, yes.
We'll have it at the wastewater treatment plant, I think.
Okay, the next item we actually have on the agenda is the discussion of our 2023 goals, but our past experience shows that some of you who have more expeditable issues would probably appreciate it if we jump to those first, then if you have a burning curiosity about our kind of goals, you're more than welcome to stay, but we will just jump to a few action items here and suspect that will be a good thing from some people's perspective. So the first one we have is a board and a committee appointments. First, to accept the resignation of Mary McCarthy from the Conservation Commission. I think that's one. And then the second motion will be to appoint John Woodhull to the Conservation Commission. So can I first entertain a motion to accept Mary McCarthy's
So moved.
resignation?
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. Next, a motion
Move
to,
to appoint John Woodhull to the Conservation Commission.
Second?
all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. So that's done. Next item is a vote to authorize the town administrator to extend the town's fixed pricing electric utilities contract with Power Options.
Yes, so we have an existing contract with Power Options for our electric generation charges, and we have a joint contract with the schools in the town. I'm asking for advance permission to sign these contracts because the rate is changing on a daily basis. And in order to lock that in, I need to sign the contract once we find an acceptable rate. We had dipped down, I think it was 12.9 around December. We're back up to 13.3, so we're meeting with Power Options on Friday, Michael, Frank, and I. I know you've heard me joke that we're electricity day traders now, but that's literally what we're doing. And so we need to be able to lock that rate in, and I need your permission to do that.
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Go for it. Let us know how it works out.
I'll let you know.
Handle some of the personal investments on the side, depending on.
If the
how
lights
you-
don't turn on in January, you know it didn't go well.
It was, I actually heard this first, the Mass Municipal Association annual meeting. I went to the community choice aggregation presentation, and one of the presenters was the town manager, I think from maybe Marlboro. She was one of the very first ones to get the approval of community choice program, and she was talking about, they did really well to start with, and then things kind of went against them, and then she was literally talking about, we were watching the electricity prices on a daily basis, trying to figure out when to pull the
It's
trigger.
the first
so-
email we get every day.
We get an email, and we're usually texting by about 7:30 in the
Yeah.
morning. What should we do? Are we in? Are we out?
So this will be fun to watch, see what Christine comes up with here. Next, we have a request from Roach Brothers Supermarkets to use the park behind Brothers Marketplace for their one-day plant sale on May 20th with a rain date of the 21st. And I think, Caitlin, we have someone here to, or is it online?
Caitlin might be online.
Caitlin online. Caitlin Roche.
This is the park with a to-be-named later?
No,
Yes.
yeah, yeah, pretty much.
Park voting with both face.
There she is.
Caitlin, hi Caitlin.
Hi, how are you?
Just fine, welcome.
Thank you. So, pretty much what we are requesting to do, in all of our Roach stores, so in all 16 of them, for as long as I can remember, we hosted a one-day plant sale where there is like a steep discount to annuals, perennials, herbs for gardening, so on and so forth, offered to the community. And this year, we wanted to do a test in one of our brothers' locations. And leadership and the merchandising buying team suggested Medfield to be the test for that. That being said, we typically block off 6 to 8 parking spots in our Roach stores. Obviously, our brother stores have much smaller spaces because it's a smaller concept. So when we were looking at the logistics, one of my team members suggested a green space that abuts our parking lot, which, as I found out, is a town park. So I'm pretty much just asking to see if we could utilize that space for the plant sale. We're not 100% sure how we would merchandise it yet, because we would want to walk the park as a team if we get the approval. So that's pretty much the gist of what we're looking to do. So I'd be happy to hear what your thoughts are.
This is a background comment for the public in general. You should be aware that Brothers actually allows the town to use the back parking lot, which is the spaces that we use for the library. But that's actually a Brothers parking lot. So just to paint the full picture and collaboration between us and Brothers and the civic contributions Brothers has made, I would just throw that out there.
Yep.
Thank you. I mean, we love being in town, so it's been positive for us as well.
Questions, comments?
Oh, no, I think this is a no-brainer. I think of all of the nights, too, when they're very cooperative, when there's the concerts going on throughout the summer, where I know every so often somebody might park in there and not buy something. So I think this is something that's, I would support 100%.
Pete?
I think it's a great idea too, so I've been supportive of it. Caitlin, I am very curious about your store in Medfield, because I know it was a new model for Roach Brothers when you opened it. I guess you had one maybe in Weston or something, but that we were maybe the second of your small store models, and I just was curious. I've asked the people at the store, and they say that it's working great, but I thought you might have better information about how it's working out for Roach Brothers.
So it's working out really well. Obviously, we need to be very mindful of where we place these types of stores because it's definitely more of a curated experience, and not all towns have that demographic or consumer that are interested in that. So with one little mishap, and we weren't super successful in Waltham, but we've had great luck in Medfield and Duxbury and Weston and our other locations. So it's definitely something we need to be more strategic at and be very mindful of where we exist and do we actually have the consumers there that are going to be interested in the experience we're offering.
It's a big draw in our downtown. It's a great addition to our downtown, so I think that the
Yeah, I mean,
town
that
likes
storefront was
having-
like the first, so we were really excited to get in there and the design and just the pull from like the curb appeal that we were able to execute there. It's completely different than any of the other locations, and it's probably one of my favorites to look at from the sidewalk.
If I can interject, the prepared sandwiches, the whole range of them are outstanding.
Thank you. But we love them too. I know, we need to like cycle in some more seasonal things, I think. So like, stay tuned. We've got some creative juices flowing. We had some organizational changes. So I think some like big exciting things will be happening across the board. So we've got some work to do.
So Mark's a successful attorney, I'm just a mere country attorney, and so I buy your bread.
Come on in, you might be able to find something more exciting.
I think Pete prefers the peasant loaf. So Pete didn't ask the question I just knew he was going to ask. Are you related to the Roach brothers?
Yes, so
Okay.
that's the question I get quite often. I'm currently the only third-generation family member kind of paving her way and career path and
All right.
going through all of the processes to get to where I would like to go.
All right. Excellent. That's great.
Caitlin, I was fascinated to see that your office has moved from the location in Wellesley that I've visited in the past. You guys were very generous to supply fireworks money to the town of Medfield that I was raising for the town, and so I ended up at your facility there, but I see where you are now. I knew you were out of that building, but I didn't know where you were, so.
Yeah, no, we just moved. We realized that like 75% of our workforce actually worked on this side of like the whole 495 situation. So when we were looking for new office locations, because we also needed to expand our office space, Mansfield just kind of popped up at like the perfect time. And then it wasn't perfect anymore because COVID prevented us from utilizing our office for the first 2 years we moved in. But we're all in there now. So we're back, we're collaborating, we're getting back on track with the community events and things like the plant sale and all of the fun stuff that we really like doing with the towns that we operate in.
Great. Motion?
Move to grant Roach Brothers Supermarkets the use of the park behind Brothers Marketplace for their one-day plant sale on May 20th with the rain date on the 21st.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. You're all set, Caitlin? Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Next, we have a request to display a heart on the town hall property in support of Hunter's battle with cancer. And I think we have, oh, you're Jessica, okay. I was looking for the wrong person in the room. Jessica, if you want to, you can do it from there.
Okay. So my name is Jessica Benson. I live at 26 Evergreen Way, off Hardinghood. I have a lot of Hardinghood actually is here tonight. And we have a neighbor, Hunter Williams. The Williams family has been in the neighborhood for a couple of years. Hunter, when I first met him, was 8 years old and he was in a stroller. He's a double lung transplant survivor. When he was born, they told his parents to just let him come home and not bother to try and save him. And Kristen and Blake and Logan, they're a wonderful family, they moved out to Medfield, to Boston, and Boston Children's was able to lift this child up. And those of us in the hood have seen him over the past years go from a child in a stroller to a kid who's walking. His mom, Kristen, is amazing, and Blake, they walk with him. He was running, he was biking. And this past summer, his family suffered a tragedy with their house, was lost to a fire. And then Hunter himself was diagnosed with a very rare cancer. He is the only one in the world with this cancer right now. The prognosis is very tough. It's a very aggressive cancer. I know that we all know how isolating and scary cancer is. And so what we started to do in our neighborhood, I just had the idea, I was putting a heart out literally in my planter at the end of my driveway for like Valentine's Day. And I thought, what if I could just get a few of our neighbors to start putting these hearts out just as a visual for Kristen and Blake, Logan and Hunter, just to see. So now Hunter gets a kick out of seeing these hearts popping up everywhere in our neighborhood. They just look like this. I take them everywhere with me. And we just put them on our lawns. Yes, sure.
I'm right, I'm at a comment. I'm going to school in the morning.
Yeah. I got the police station to put one up. I got Jim James to put one up. I thought maybe Town Hall could put one in their lawn. It's just a lift for him as he's fighting this battle, and I'm trying to get it in as many public places and neighborhoods as we can to try and lift this family up, because what they have endured is really more than what most families have in this town, and I just really feel kind of strongly that it would be great if we could help them out. That was it.
Well, so I absolutely positively know I can put one in my front lawn, right? That's a no-brainer on my Metacomet. I know the challenge that we've had at the town hall before, and this is just from past experience and hearing, I think we've been challenged with just accepting, putting banners, flags, whatever. We've kept it neutral. So I'm going to let it go to you, the chairman.
I will
but-
jump in,
Yeah.
with your permission, Pete.
but
I'll
I
jump in on
support
this one.
100% person.
We've adopted, just back up. We've had several requests from different organizations wanting us to put banners up and bathe the town hall in lights. And we've had a very hard policy that just says the town doesn't use town property for political speech. This is not political speech.
Right, yeah.
This is not the same thing. And so, I don't feel like we're either violating the policy that was established around political speech, and this is something that's different. And so I would encourage all three of us to take that in mind. I'll go out of order here. I absolutely support this.
Oh, good. Then I do as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
I support it too. I think it does violate our policy, and I think it does make us vulnerable probably, but I don't care.
I really appreciate that. Thank you very much.
And you want to tell people how they can get the hearts?
Yeah, you can stop by my house. I have them all in a white bucket underneath my mailbox, and anybody can take them. There's no
Where-
26 Evergreen Way, Medfield, Mass. I'm gonna give some to Jim James too at Park Street because I think he will. You know, you can stop by Park Street and pick them up. And is there a place where you guys would feel most comfortable for me to put it into the ground? Or
I was going to ask you, where did you want it to go in the ground? Where would you
I'd
like?
like it to be out in his front. You know,
Okay.
I want Hunter to see it.
Pete.
So,
Okay.
Hey, Pete. Oh, sorry, Mark.
You only want one?
Putting it in a window?
well, of course I
Just
thought
taping
about
it in a window in
I've
town
never put
hall?
two out there. They just kind of go into the ground.
What?
They have like little
that
sticks in
different?
the
Is that
ground.
Yeah, I think
and they
so.
just go in.
Yeah.
Are you also doing, is there some road race for this as well?
Yes, thank you. There's a road race. If you go onto Facebook, Hunters Run. Oh, sorry. Okay, yes, sure. My address is 26 Evergreen Way, Medfield, Mass. My hearts are outside my house. There's a big planter. Next to the planter, there's a big bucket full of hearts. Please come by and take them. Anyone can get it. And please support Hunters Run. It's on April 2nd. It is to support organ donation. It is on behalf of Hunter. Hunter, I believe, is going to be trying to bike it.
Ah, fun.
And we're trying to get as many hearts along the route to kind of wave at him as he goes by. He's a wonderful, wonderful kid. It's a great family, and I really appreciate your support in lifting this family up. They're pretty special.
Well, again, if you guys have a sign for promoting the road race.
Yes.
Because again, cars get backed up every morning trying to get to the high school and
Yeah.
the middle school, and I'm more than happy to put the sign out there to promote it, so.
Oh, wonderful. I think Kristen would really love that,
Yeah,
so
and-
thank
and
you
she
very
can
much.
just come in, pop it, don't worry about if she's driving by and she's
Okay.
putting in there, put one in
I'll
there.
tell her. Yeah, for sure.
Would you consider, say, taping it in the window of, like, the door in the town hall as opposed to sticking it in the ground outside the front?
Does that work for you, Jessica?
That works for me. That's what Jim James did. So sure.
Oh, good,
Yep.
good.
Yep. That's fine.
I would say we defer to the way you'd most like us to present it.
That's great. Thank you.
Thank you for doing this.
Okay. No, thank you guys.
It's awesome, thank
Really
you.
appreciate it.
Okay. Thank you, Jessica.
Should I just leave it?
Leave it, and if you don't leave it with me, I'll take care of it tonight.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Can I have the other one?
We, yeah. And I guess,
Jessica, Can I have the other one?
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Here, I'll give you the stuff that you can put it in.
Can I put it on my tree out front? Is that okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, this would be a better
I
spot.
mean, and anybody can honestly make a heart. They just kind of stick in. Thank you,
I
guys.
think technically, we need a motion.
I think it's a motion.
Yeah.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed, motion carries. Thank you.
Guys, thank you
Okay.
so much. We really appreciate it.
Let's see, the last action item we have here is a potential, oh, no, never mind. Never mind. No, we don't, that's it. Okay, I'm going to go, I think, straight through the consent agenda, and then we'll wind up with the goals. So consent agenda will be fast, Kathy. We have four items on the consent agenda. First one is a request from Medfield Youth Hockey to place signs at the intersection of Route 109 Hartford Street and Route 27 South Street, advertising the opening of registration starting March 8th and ending March 22nd. The next one is a request from the Medfield Lions Club for a one-day beer wine permit on March 30th from 7 p.m. to 10 p.m. at the Zulo Gallery for a wine tasting event. That's a Thursday night. Next one, request from the Medfield Garden Club to place sandwich boards at the transfer station and North and Main from March 19th to the 26th to advertise the Art in Bloom event. And then the last one is a long list of 22 dates from Belforge Art Center for one-day alcohol permits for the following dates. So what we know immediately is that 22, that's almost 26, which would be 6-month period of fun and entertainment and drinking up at Belforge. I'm gonna, because I think I have to, I'm gonna read the dates and then I'm gonna let Jean briefly comment to explain what you're thinking about as far as the dates go.
You're
That's
gonna have to
okay.
include the rain dates too if you do that.
I will do that. So first one, April 29th, 12 to 3 p.m. That's a Saturday. Rain date, April 30th, which is Sunday. The next one, May 6th from 12 to 5 p.m. Saturday. Rain date, May 7th, which is Sunday. Next one, June 3rd, 12 to 7 p.m. Saturday. Rain date is June 4th, Sunday. Next one, June 10th, 12 to 7 p.m. Saturday. Rain date is June 11th, which is a Sunday. And then the last one for the spring season is June 17th, 12 to 7 p.m. Saturday, with a rain date of June 18th. From there, we have a number of dates that don't have rain dates. So June 21st from 5 p.m. to 8 p.m., June 28th, which is a Wednesday. These next 4 are Wednesdays. Actually, next 5 are Wednesdays. June 28th from 5 to 8, July 12th from 5 to 8 p.m., July 19th, 5 to 8, July 26th, 5 to 8. Those are all Wednesdays. The next set in August are Thursdays. August 3rd from 5 to 8, August 10th from 5 to 8, August 17th from 5 to 8, August 24th from 5 to 8, August 31st from 5 to 8. Those are all Thursdays. And then in the fall, again, starting in September, back to Saturdays. September 9th from 3 to 7 with a rain date of September 10th, which is a Sunday. September 16th, 11 to 6 p.m., rain date September 17th, also a Sunday. September 30th, 12 to 6 p.m., rain date October 1st. You get the pattern here, I don't have to keep saying that. October 7th, 11 to 3 p.m., rain date October 8th. October 14th from 12 to 5 p.m., rain date October 15th. October 21st from 12 to 5 p.m., rain date October 22nd, and October 28th, 12 to 5 p.m., rain date October 29th. So basically, we start with Saturdays, go to Wednesdays, then to Thursdays, and then back to Saturdays. Jean, if you have a few, yes?
The only one that raised it, the rain date on October 7th, where October 7th, the Saturday starts in the morning at 11, potential Sunday before noon, is that an issue? Because I think you've raised it in
Yeah, we
others.
usually will say 12 to 6. If it's a rainy day, people will show up late. Sundays, 12 to whatever your ending date. Thank you, Mark. So everybody, that'll be September 16th, and what was the other one you called out? Okay, October 7th. Yep. Okay. Would you care to comment at all at the method to the madness here?
Just that in our first year last year, we found some pretty low attendance on Saturdays in the summer. So in our second year, we just want to experiment and test some other dates and see what happens. It's really just experimenting in the summer.
And will you have barbecue or anything for the Wednesday and Thursday nights? There'll be food and drink as well?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay, those are the consent items. Any further discussion about the items on the consent agenda?
No, looks good.
Motion with the consent agenda.
Second?
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Consent agenda is approved. Okay, let's jump back up to the follow-up discussion of 2023 goals. We were intending to try to draw, recognizing that the town goals are a living document, so at any point in time, if we wanted to, we could change them. We were trying to get through this cycle to at least put a set of goals together that we could kind of document. And our goal or hope was that we could collect any remaining comments and revisions tonight to sort of at least finalize the official version of the update for this year. So the one addition that was particularly important was Kathy McDonald having put in some additional goals in, I think it's goal area 5, primarily. Goal 4, okay. And so we just want to give Kathy a chance to talk about her goals and entertain any questions. Take it away, Kathy. And yes, you do need the microphone, or you, either one. If you get
you want to stand up?
if you're
It's
tired
easier.
of sitting down, you can use the podium.
Did you, just before you start, did you edit any of these from our last discussion?
I have not touched. I haven't, except for Kathy. I hadn't gotten anything else that's come in, so I haven't done anything different than what we did what we had 2 weeks ago, because you both quite properly had said you didn't send them out to us until today, so we really haven't looked at it. So the document has not changed from 2 weeks ago,
Okay.
except that Kathy has the Google Doc that does have hers in it. So we'll let you talk about those.
I just offered some edits, but like they're suggestions, they're not.
Yeah, well, and the only
anything,
reason I
yeah.
asked that question, just to make sure, because I know when we started talking about, there were times you made comments of like, continue to do whatever is not really, so that's why I'm curious if you're gonna edit that, and that's what we're.
I did.
That's what we're talking about.
Yeah. So basically what I was trying to do is
Would it make sense to put you want to put the thing up?
Sure.
Up?
I know Mary Haas is somewhere in the audience too, so she's been leading our prevention work.
While we're waiting for that to come up, just an administrative comment about the town website, because when Kathy said I have some edits, I said, where do I go for the edits? I went to the town goals, which actually I think you can get to either through the Board of Selectmen site, or also I think maybe the town administrator. Those are the goals from, what we have posted there is old stuff. I'm not actually sure where people could look at the Google Doc. Like if it's posted on the website, I couldn't even find it.
Did you see my edits?
got
When
yours,
I
but
shared a link with
Yeah,
you.
you showed me the link, but I'm not sure where, I couldn't tell from, the link is to a Google Docs folder, not anything that's on the town website.
I know,
It's not the draft town goals PDF.
It is not it's not the
That is-
PDF.
No, that is the old one.
That's the old one. But we will welcome inputs from you, Steve, at any point in time, once you get the newer one.
I bet before this meeting's over, it says new goals. Right?
Do you want me to share this link with Frank and see the edits, or does that make
Yeah,
things
actually,
even
it
more
would.
confusing?
Yeah, I think it'd be easier for you, and basically,
You could actually
your
probably-
edited version,
You can, yeah, you can go right, you can screen share.
Just go straight in?
Yeah.
I'm just thinking if people are watching,
Just send it to me.
plus Steve.
I know how to do it on a Mac, which is like the only thing I know how to do on a Mac. So.
I think what Kathy worked from would represent the most recent original version from last week, plus with her appended comments, so that's basically the latest draft.
All right, let's see if this works. There it goes.
In the interlude, can I ask a quick question on an earlier item?
Sure.
What was the rationale?
It's a placebo microphone.
What was the rationale, or what was the logic of putting the sign in the window as opposed to the lawn? Was there a reason? There must have.
Narrow, it's narrow and it's not setting any kind of precedent with respect to unattended structures on the lawn, which is really what the focus of the policy was anyway. So we've just steered further away from it.
And when I send it to you, sometimes it doesn't show up unless you go up in the upper left-hand corner, which is editing, and you see suggested edits. maybe it hasn't. Go to 4. Goal 4. Is my stuff all over it? Yeah, my stuff's all over it. It's in
Okay.
there. So, just to give a little bit of, when I saw that the town was working on youth goals, knowing that Medfield Outreach is a town department, I wondered if our goals could take place of some of the town goals, given that we are, part of the town government, being a department of yours. So I cut and pasted just sort of quickly in an email format, not meaning for it to be this formal, to say, hey, here's some goals Medfield Outreach is working on, therefore the town is working on them as your agent, if you will. And then upon closer inspection, the language wasn't quite right because they were internal goals, and so they needed to be reworked, should you choose to keep them, to reflect action steps to meet some of these larger goals. So I went in today, stuck with the language. I didn't change your goal heading of goal 4. That remained the same, nor did I offer any edits to the key focus areas or most of the long-term goals. It was more the highlighted yellow items, but I did have a question you'll see there in the green under long-term goals. So it reads, develop and implement a thoughtful framework for addressing the full range of challenges confronting the town's young people. And my question there was, are you looking to create some sort of committee to look at this? I was just offering Medfield Outreach to play a role in that, should you choose, because I had some questions about how that would happen. That seemed to need to gather information, like key informant or sort of interview or maybe some sort of forum with young folks before we could develop and implement a framework for them. So I felt like that was maybe a step ahead. So I might be making more work for this, but that was one of the comments. And then you'll see under the 23-24 goals, some of them stayed the same. There's some questions I think maybe offered in by, I don't know whether it was Gus or the select board collectively. And I just struck some of the internal language for Medfield Outreach's strategic goals, and I made them a little more general to increase awareness of Medfield Outreach's mission, services, and how to access help as a way to reach the goal of supporting the cultural, physical, emotional, and civic development of our children. So that speaks to part of that goal. And then increase collaboration with town and school departments and other key community partners to increase youth employment and volunteer opportunities in Medfield, which speaks to the latter half of that goal. And then create spaces and opportunities for youth to promote mental and emotional well-being via student-led groups, youth coalitions, as well as, and I know this is something we keep coming back to, and Park and Rec comes back to also in the community, in some other group formats that have been offered, talk about the need for a rec center or some sort of space where youth can access. As you drive through town, things are dark at 9 p.m. I know we old-timers are looking for things to do even at the ripe time of 9:30. Never mind our youth. And some of the key informant interviews that we have done through our prevention work has demonstrated that for many youth, they're drinking and experimenting with substances because they're bored and it alters their reality and they find that as fun. And so one of the things that has informed our work, that if we give them substance-free events and activities that they will buy into, that will speak to the work of prevention. So I added that offered that as a goal.
Maybe we stop there
Wanna
just
stop
for a
there,
minute and
pause?
just
Sure.
get reactions and thoughts to.
I like the way you cleaned it up. I think I think we're in step with, we are together in this. And so when we're looking through the other goals, we're looking to some of the other departments to make sure that we're working with them, they're working with us. So I think the way you've brought this in to the format works for me. I think you bring up a really good question about under the long-term 5 to 10-year plan, what are we really trying to do there? I don't know the answer to that right now. Are we looking to put together some form of committee? It would be a good discussion point.
Yeah, I think it's a good question. I think when we first wrote the long-term goals, you might have a different perspective, but the long-term on something like that was trying to promote taking a comprehensive look at all the things that go into successfully developing young people in town. And so that's kind of like it requires thoughtful thinking. It probably requires thoughtful thinking by a broad range of people.
Right.
And maybe even some evolving thinking over time, either as the needs of the kids change or as different people with different perspectives contribute to it. But I would agree, I mean, that you've actually asked a question that's like, okay, that's great for the long range and at a conceptual level, but what's the first step? And I actually think your idea of a committee, I might move it into the right-hand column as something specifically that we'd like to do. But I think it's good that you added it and asked the question. I just think the green thing actually is probably one of the things that goes over the right-hand column.
Yeah, I think that one of the things that we meaning my department has felt strongly about is to really, we're lucky enough that we're sort of small enough in some ways that benefits us to pivot and to be responsive to the community's needs. In our community survey allowed us to make sure that we're on track with the services we provide. And so when I look at this goal, I want to make sure that we give an opportunity here, elevate youth voices, to ask them what they need and what they're looking for, so the tail doesn't wag the dog, but we're actually responding to what youth in our community are needing and are looking for. So,
Well, you highlight something that is near and dear back to my Park and Rec days, is that I remember when we were at town meeting and I reminded people it's not about just lacrosse or just football or just basketball. It's about ping pong. It's about cooking. It's about chess. So your committee, to me, needs to be a component as we move forward and we sort out where, we need a new Parks and Recreation building in this town. It just keeps getting stepped over. But when everything just occurred with the pandemic and how it's impacted our youth, as we move forward with that, I think a committee like this is essential to make sure their voice is heard and that the buildings, the services, the activities are in line with what these young men and women and boys and girls are requesting, and not a group of adults trying to dictate what we think they need.
definitely, and one of the sets of data that we received back from our community-wide survey, which wasn't youth voice, it was adult voices, top 3 things when we didn't control for income was recreation and recreational space and cultural opportunities. And so it's exciting to me that we're addressing that through Bell Forge and the arts, while simultaneously looking at what's going to happen with our youth center and youth experiences via rec center, via outreach, via community-based work, civic opportunities, all the whole rest of it. So this sort of speaks nicely to all that, I hoped.
Pete, I kind of cut you off. Do you have any?
Well, I like your additions to these, and I think that it absolutely makes sense that, I appreciate your putting in the offer to lead and facilitate the discussion, and I think that you guys are the appropriate people to be doing that. So that, to me, I think that we should give you the charge to go ahead and start doing that as soon as possible. So.
Thank you, I think.
I mean, I don't know if you're going to talk about the things on the next page or not. But
Okay.
I just had, your last bullet point was ensure the long-term sustainability of prevention efforts by adding the prevention coordinator position to the annual operating budget. And I guess I just put a question of timing on that. And obviously have to work that out with Chris and the board committee.
Yeah. So there's a few, do you want me to speak to the other things, or pause there?
Just finish off the first
Of course.
page for a second. I agree with the points about the committee, but the question that comes to mind, I do think it makes sense for Medfield Outreach to take the lead, so you put your hand up, I'm happy to call on you for that. But because we're talking about youth and because we're talking about these kinds of needs, I also started thinking, so what are the other, who else should be involved in this? I assume in some way, shape, or form, unless they just don't want to do it, the schools, somebody from the schools probably has to have a voice in this. So that's just in terms of, just because you have the lead doesn't mean you have to do all the work. It's more a matter of pulling things together. The other one to get at the facility issue, I don't think it's this year. I don't think getting that facility, if that's what we're talking about with that last item here, is realistic for this year. On the other hand, if what we're saying is, no, we have a school we're going to have to figure out, and that's going to take a few years before we even know what we're dealing with for anything else on top of that. And I say that as someone who moved here in '95 and was told that the Parks and Rec facility was number 5 on the priority list. So it's not like I don't I understand how things get delayed, but as a practical matter, I think there's a school that's gonna have to get funded before we deal with a formal facility beyond the school, unless there's some creative solution that does both. However, if we don't think strictly in terms of a building that we want to put up that we don't have now, and we do think in terms of what facilities does the town have that could host youth events in the, in the short run, it's not the permanent physical solution for as a physical asset, but what could we be using here in town to host those kinds of things? And some of them might not even be buildings. I mean, some of them may be rocky woods in the summertime. But to not bind ourselves to a particular building that has a sign on the door, but rather saying, what are some of the venues that could possibly work? I think back when we first moved here, it was, Pete, do you remember, what was it wasn't Summerfest, what was there used to be a concert. Springfest, Fall Fest.
That the Park and Rec ran up at the.
Well,
McCarthy
before
Park.
Park and Rec ran it, the kids ran it. And what happened is, when it started to get run by Parks and Rec, it started to attract families. And when it attracted families, if you're targeting the older kids, it fell apart because they went away. So, and I'm not saying that, that's just how it evolved. I'm saying having that broader perspective of what the forum fora might be to do things, at least between now and the time we figure out how to design something that's more suited. That's what I think we could put as a goal for this year, to try to figure that stuff out.
Because my recollection of the fests were that they were all just the high school kids. I don't remember families really ever showing up. I mean, we did the fireworks with them in conjunction with them, and so that brought families maybe, but most of the music was the kids.
When my kids were growing up, the original fest was the kids running their own spontaneous concerts. And then because it was so popular.
I mean, what I knew of it was Lisa Lowett from the Park and Rec was running it, and she provided the sound system.
Oh, yeah. The adults got involved and they made it better. Yes.
Well, the kids decided who was going to play, which bands were going to play, and the kids just loved it. They came in hordes, and so it's a great model.
Pete, I'm telling you, my kids were that age at the time. They told me exactly what happened. Again, it's not a criticism, I'm saying, but giving youth the chance to actually define for themselves what's needed or what they want to do, that takes almost a different set of skills, because you sort of have to facilitate it and then be able to let it go a little bit if the initiative is there, and without having somebody run off the cliff.
Yes.
So have we, I know this is going to touch some people the wrong way, but when I voted for the center of Medfield, I always thought that was going to be for the residents of Medfield, not just a specific age demographic. And now that the pandemic is getting smaller and smaller in the rearview window, and I leave Kingsbury Club after playing pickleball in the evening and it's dark, but look at all of the youth that are coming and going. Maybe they're dropping off one sibling, but the other kid's in the car. Like, I'm wondering, is that a resource that we can look at again? Because it is a nice building that is wildly underutilized after the late afternoon. And I'm not saying anything negative to the Council on Aging. I know what they do is fantastic, but there is space that was funded by the town with the intent for the reason it wasn't called the Medfield Senior Center when we voted on it. It was because clearly in the 2007 or 2008 annual report, it literally opened it with, this will be a community center. And I'm hearing what we're talking about, and I think it's a perfect time to really relook at how do we re-engage to make sure it is a community center.
I think that's an opportunity. What I do know is that they're getting more requests than ever before to utilize that space. So I do think that's changing.
Good.
And I also know that there's some steps in place to use that space. That's a little bit of a different process than maybe we all understand. So not that that's not a potential, but yeah, it is.
One of the, what I think of as the big missed opportunities was Gene Minio brought in a consultant from, I think it was from Wyoming. It was just Montana. It was just astonishing that this woman would come.
Kevin Costner?
Pardon? But, and she basically suggested that some of these facilities like Gene is doing up at the hospital are both an arts and cultural center and a park and rec facility combined. But at the time, Park and Rec had no interest in working with Gene on it, which I thought was a very unfortunate thing for Park and Rec to turn their back on, because I think that could have been a great synergies.
I can promise you that we do a tremendous amount of collaboration with what was Cultural Lines in Medfield and is now Bell Forge, and do youth programming there, and have always been met with openness and responsiveness in hosting space and just being an incredible partner. And so that when I'm talking about these goals, that's not town property, certainly, the way it's leased, but that is already fitting into these goals.
Yeah, I mean, we're all one town, so there are a lot of opportunities for synergies if we work together on things, so.
Absolutely. Yep.
The one thing I'll say about, to your point about the Council on Aging, I know when the project was being sold, it was being sold as a community center.
That's why it was called that.
Or certainly as a facility that would be available for a lot of things. And I know over the years I'd heard feedback from people saying, hey, I wanted to have a wedding reception there, and I couldn't even do that. I know Boy Scouts at one time explored using the big room for Boy Scout meetings, and that got shot down as well. I know there's some practical issues around custodial requirements and things like that. And I totally understand all the arguments that are being made here, and I actually agree with them all. However, I'm just gonna caution us, wherever we go in that direction with the COA has become what the COA is, and it's I don't know if it's the best program in the region, but I'd be very surprised if there are programs that are better than what we've had with the COA. And so my point is, if we want to go in that direction, I think we want to go in that direction in a way that the COA itself and the members that are there feel good about.
Oh, yeah.
As opposed to, we have a concept that everything is fluid
no.
and sympathetic. And I think that's one particular group of people it's worth being thoughtful about, even if you'd like to push harder than.
Well, it's a crawl, walk, run. I mean, certain rooms I would say would be off limits, period. Right? They have certain rooms there that I don't think that the general public should be going into. But I think there are other rooms that are open and potentially underutilized even there during the day, so that it's a crawl, walk, run. It's do we start using one particular room for certain hours to vet out? And again, 100% working with Council on Aging. This isn't we're going to come at them and start mandating, not ever. That's not the intent. But it is a building in town, funded by taxpayer dollars, that I think has the potential to help in this effort to try to give the youth someplace to go to gather. It's there.
Yeah, I hate to be the but person, but only for this circumstance, I say, part of a youth center is youth ownership and a feeling of like it's their place and that they can be, like Gus's point, a little bit unattended. And that varies with developmental age, certainly, and what's appropriate and what level of supervision needs to be appropriate. But sort of the most successful youth centers that I know about tend to be sort of scantily staffed, right? Like they don't have a lot of staff, but they're a welcoming space where kids can play pickup ball or play game or maker spaces or cook certain foods, not with open flames, but throw in popcorn in the microwave and just sort of feel a sense of belonging and that it's their space to access when they want to. And I agree that we can't just snap our fingers and have this beautiful, rec center. But as we're thinking about the Park and Rec needing a new building, as we're thinking about Medfield Outreach to Space, as we're thinking about these things, let's think about them in a comprehensive way in which we invest our dollars as that sort of plays out in a way that meets youth needs. We're talking about youth goals, meets programmatic needs, meets just collaboratively a good use of space where, I don't know, people can feel welcome and get what they need out of the building. That's less of a proprietary feeling, but more of a welcome space.
I know that years ago, someone recommended that I take a look at Randolph's Community Center, which I did, and it was for the whole community, It was very impressive, actually, from what I remember. So, I mean, there are different models, clearly, as to how it can be done, so.
When the COA project first came up, we used to live in Mystic, Connecticut, and Mystic built a community center. Had a pool, had basketball courts. For the size of the community we had, it was actually pretty impressive. And they actually built some rooms for seniors. So the model that I started with when the COA project first came up was, gosh, Mystic did a great job. They had certain places the seniors could use as their rooms, but during the daytime, if you went, I'd go work out to go swim, and you'd walk by the basketball courts, and they had senior jazzercise going on there, and they'd do stuff in the water. So I looked at the recreational dimension of a, Parks and Rec facility type thing. Automatically was brought together, and it was real easy. When that concept was raised here, it was a little bit like what you were talking about, the youth want their own place. I think there was that similar view with the seniors. And it was like, well, okay, but it was pretty good down in Mystic because of the things you could do from a programmatic standpoint.
Yeah.
That was, we built the center a long time ago. So maybe the viewpoint, the philosophy, and the predispositions have evolved or could evolve if people saw more possibilities from the synergy. My earlier comment just had to be careful how we do that we don't bowl people over trying to push forward. And then to your point, Kathy, and maybe you could do all this stuff, and if you do it where you bring the young people in, they go, this isn't ours. You can put a lot of effort into something that's not really going to take hold. So we got to figure out the best path forward. Okay. Next page.
Okay, next page. Extend mental health and substance misuse prevention program across the community, including into lower grades in collaboration with schools and other community partners. So that's just saying, doing much of the work that we're doing, prevention work with our community partners, not just we, Medfield Outreach. There are 12 sectors that make up our prevention model. Start aiming that down towards elementary school. That's really where it's at, and that we would like to sort of make a dent there. So a lot of our efforts have been put at the middle school and the high school, so we want to shift that. That was one. Broaden Medfield residents' understanding of the scope of outreach prevention programming to include promoting wellness in the community by participating in community events, school events, and other opportunities as they become available. That's just simply stated for us to be present and available and interfacing with community members at Belforge events, at Medfield Day, just doing good work. Sort of like what Brenda Healy was saying about her public health nursing. We're doing that from a prevention model, similar strategy. And then prevention coordinators through Medfield Outreach will engage youth in programming to educate on substance use risks and to promote mental health. So that's just more prevention work. And then ensure the long-term sustainability of prevention efforts by adding prevention coordinator position into the annual operating budget if future funding is not awarded. So we do fully intend on applying for year 6 through 10 of the DFC grant, which is a competitive bid process, and or looking at other funding that may be suited for the same purpose that might have less requirements, I will say, attached to it. However, great news is since the CDC took over the administration of this grant, things have been getting streamlined and easier and less cumbersome. So that's a really good sign, and that continues to improve.
And Kathy, also we've included in your budget this year an additional clinician that will serve both the Council on Aging and Outreach that we will be funding with the opioid settlement.
Oh,
fund.
yeah.
So
Okay.
that is included as well.
Fabulous. Fabulous. And again, that's sort of that more of a collaborative type of model and sharing resources and, whether that looks like a 2-day, 3-day split or whether that looks like morning hours at the senior center because that's when the folks are there, and then afternoon hours to provide counseling after school or community assistance with folks. We will address those needs as we'll address the services as the needs approach come in. I think those were my edits.
Kathy, why did you take out that one about increased protective factors and reduced risk for the youth substance?
Well, because I thought that was redundant and that it was said with our prevention program. That is sort of part and parcel of what prevention work is. And so I just thought it was duplicative. It's not that that's not a great goal. I just think that's sort of assumed in the prevention work.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
My only, this is the curmudgeon comment. The last item again, the goals, I think the Energy Committee can confirm that I push back when we build in a goal that's basically trying to embed a staffing decision or a funding decision. I will immediately push back and say, no, what is it we want to accomplish? And then we may or may not need to have staffing or funding, as opposed to saying, oh, it's in the goal, so therefore we've decided to do it. So for me, it's a semantic thing. I understand what you're saying. This is not a very well-focused comment. And especially directing it at you, I think you know me well enough that you know I'm not attacking because I like what you do. But sometimes when I look at the list, what I see is we need to do more of the stuff we've been doing. And I find myself saying two things. One, I don't know what the focus, it's not what are the emerging issues or what are the most pressing issues and why are we doing that? As opposed to, when Brenda was talking about, evidence-based type work, I think you also have been trying to do that. We're trying to demonstrate that if we have programs that do things, we want to demonstrate that they're working. I think if you can demonstrate that the program's working, it's a lot easier to make the case that maybe you want more of it as long as the problem is still there. We haven't solved the problem. So that's, for me, a little bit was unclear about that piece of demonstrating results from the things we're doing to therefore justify
Sure.
doing more of it, if that's the case.
I completely understand your point, and I will say to you that one of the reasons the funding periods are so long with these federal grants is because they have all the research to support the efficacy and the outcomes around this type of work, and we don't willy-nilly it. We have a strategic prevention framework. There has to be 12 sectors. We're constantly, it feels constant. It's twice a year, and then annually, twice a year for progress reports, annually to write a whole new project narrative and budget narrative that gets reviewed and looked at very closely by the government. And that's why then there is that 6 through 10 years, because what they know is really what we're doing is inviting the community with those various 12 sectors to lean into this work, and then it takes a long time because we're talking about changing perception of risk, perception of harm with substances. We're talking about a culture shift. We're talking about education. We're talking about risk factors, increasing protection. So it's a lot of work with a lot of people. And on top of that, we lost at least 2 years between late hiring from the pandemic and then school being a hybrid model, not being able to meet in person. So I feel like we're really at our momentum right now, which we would have had at year 2, but we're in year 4. Mm-hmm. And I think also our data from the MWAS is a little bit, this is completely just my bias. I think it's skewed because we measured in 2021 and we know that a lot more parents were home, and so there was a lot more supervision of youth, and so even still those numbers came up elevated for youth substance misuse.
Is that the adolescent youth
Yep.
survey?
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So we're really wondering what that measure is going to look like when we do it again in 23, when sort of baseline behavior of our youth, and that is still above our Metro West friends.
One of the things that's been on my mind for this, and this is not my area, so I'm swinging way outside of my strike zone. But there's two things. When I looked at some of the survey results, it was apparent to me, at least to the extent that the results, the way they were portrayed, showed it, that there are issues that have grown that maybe are a little bit surprising, other issues that have not, which I guess was good news. But when I try to think about how to think about that, I also recognize that over the past 5 or 6 years, largely through our housing development and things like that, that the basic demographic makeup of this town, and I'm talking not just demographic in one direction, economics, all of it, I find myself saying, well, so you have these changes in the statistics. Some of those issues seem to me to actually be issues that seem to be more associated with some of the more affluent youth that we have in town. But part of me is saying, but intuitively, I would think that there would be a set of issues that might be driven by some of the people who moved into town who are not as affluent as some of the most affluent in town. And I can't get my hands around very well understanding, where the sources are, where the core roots of some of these issues are. I don't know, you probably have more of an idea than I do, but that's, when I review the statistics, they're always bundled together by age, and I'm saying, but do we actually understand what our own population really needs? And we looked at it to really not just look at it as an amorphous blob that seems to be going in directions, but rather get deep enough down into it to recognize who exactly needs what.
We can definitely look at that data, and the Metro West gives some of that. We don't control for income because we question youth, and so I don't think that there's a question on the Metro West regarding household or median income in a household. So that's not data we have. We can control for gender. We can control for grade. There's a lot of things on Metro West that they can look at all those different variables and give you the requested information. We do know, and we do have the data about for example, girls in certain grades are much more endorsing symptoms of anxiety at a higher rate than their male counterparts, might be endorsing symptoms of suicidal ideation at higher rates than their counterparts. We also know from research, from good research, not just from the MWAS data, that teens, not just teens, they overestimate how much other people are using for substances. So when they norm their behavior to someone else, they're already starting with faulty data to begin with. And so we're trying to look at, in our office, how do we bring that into some of our wellness visits, or how do we get that in to show kids that there's been great college studies that show this, and to maybe even have our high school students participate in guessing, and then maybe, sort of doing a pre and poster, somehow bringing it to them so they can say it's happening in vivo with them. Because if you think your friend is drinking a 12-pack a weekend, well, you might escalate but if you actually know that there's a lot of people that actually either aren't drinking or drinking minimally, or might just be saying they're drinking because they think that that's what everyone else says, but they're not, well, then you might norm your behavior that way. So that's called a positive norms campaign, social norms campaign. And my prevention workers right now are working on a mailer that's going to go out to all homes of under 21-year-olds, or 21 and under, I believe, that talk about positive norms. So instead of stating how many do, we're stating how many don't, right?
So there's an anecdote, it's a superficial anecdote that I heard probably a year ago that's what's driving my comments here. And it was talking about, it happened to be, the anecdote was about girls going to Starbucks at the end of the day after school to go get get coffee. And the anecdote, it was like 3 girls, but 2 of them just did it without thinking. The third one couldn't afford buying Starbucks every day. And that's, if we want to be the kind of community I think we say we want to be, somehow or another we have to be able to get down to the level of granularity that sees those kinds of things and develops the solutions. And it isn't, let's have a fund for people who can't afford Starbucks so they can come. That's not the answer. It's got to do with how people think about stuff. It has to do with developing the skills for people to be empathetic enough with their friends to not assume that they're all in the exact same strata. And that's where I'm looking, is it's like, well, if that survey doesn't give us the insight, it seems like we ought to have it because it makes a difference.
Well, I think you're speaking to a universal that we know in mental health, which is feelings of connectedness and feelings of belonging are one of the best outcome indicators of mental health, good mental health, and success, and is feeling that you matter and that you belong. And one of the things we're seeing that puts our youth at most risk is desperate feelings of loneliness. Walking in the school, looking like they're fine, and feeling terribly lonely and disconnected from others. And we're hearing that on small ends, and we're seeing that on larger data collections. And so here I'm kind of joking and kind of not. What better place than a rec center to welcome everybody and have free coffees or whatever, people throw $1 in or whatever they can afford into the bucket, and we replenish the coffee or the whatever, fuzzy waters or whatever they're into these days. But that's what I kind of hear you speaking to, is what can we do that everybody has access, where everybody belongs, where an economic don't divide. And
I guess what I'm saying is, do we even know what those divides are?
there's a whole bunch of them.
Yeah.
And
that's the point. I'm like, I know that going to Starbucks or not going to Starbucks is one of those micro divides, but it's hard for me. It's the culture of the town. do we set things up where, people work certain ways, or do we figure out a way that everybody can join in without even necessarily having to make a big deal about it?
Well, we increase diversity and equity and inclusion, and we have people be more open-minded, and it's hard to do that in a very homogeneous place where we are more similar than we are different. And so,
And I guess what I'm saying is, I'm not sure that's as true as everybody assumes it is, because it was true 10 years ago.
yeah.
And so there's a change, yes.
Pretty true. Look around. We're still pretty white and
But
affluent here.
you drive down the street, you can see a difference, and
No, it's changing.
Yeah.
The demographics are changing for sure. But what is it like for those folks who are different and moving into the community? And what are the pressures on them? And how do we welcome them and bring them into this community in a way that really welcomes them, to places like Brothers Market, right? To places like, I don't know, Kingsbury Club with an annual membership. Like I think it's a little bit, it's a complex.
It's very hard to be different in Medfield.
It's very hard. You know that we have that data from our community needs survey about that. Gus, you were on that committee. So yeah, people endorse that, certainly.
okay.
All right.
So administratively, seeing as I've been I think I have everyone's inputs here, and I'm going to use the version of, this is the question, I'm not telling you what I'm going to do. I'm offering to do something if the two of you are good with it. I can do one final compilation and finalization of this, and just basically send it to you, and then if we can get the postings on the website straight, I'll assume that we have come to closure on this it's a living document, so it's never cast in concrete, it's only soft clay, but that will get us to the end of this discussion for 6 months at least. Okay, all right.
Thank you, Kathy.
Yes, thanks, Kay. No meeting minutes, town administrator update.
I have nothing.
No citizens' comment?
I don't have any.
Do we have any citizens left in the room that want to comment? Or is there anything?
I don't have any
No
registered
citizens.
Okay, just checking.
Okay. Let's see.
Very interesting case today from the SJC on citizen comment at select board meetings.
Yeah, I didn't get a chance to read it all yet. But I did get, thanks for sending it on.
Southborough.
Next meeting
They
date?
cited the Massachusetts Constitution and slapping the select board in Southborough around for closing the discussions because it was uncivil.
It's very interesting read.
I started, but I ran out of time. Next meeting, March 21st. The annual town election is March 27th, Monday. And then March 28th will be the warrant hearing. Christine, where's that? That's here in
Right
this
now, we're
room?
scheduled to be in this room.
Okay. And we all will going to be there for that warrant hearing. This is still a joint meeting? Or is it a warrant committee meeting?
It is a warrant committee meeting. You're not scheduled to meet as the board of selectmen that
Okay.
night, but we'll host you as a joint meeting
Okay.
to have with them, but it
So-
is
so
technically
basic-
their meeting.
But basically, we'll sit in the background and just watch the fireworks, if there are any. Okay. Selectmen reports. Eileen?
Alrighty, so, as I mentioned when we were talking about the UVC component, I had a chance to sit and meet with Mo last Thursday, something I've been trying to schedule since I got on board here last March. But it was fantastic. I had a chance to meet a ton of the guys, great understanding of just how many buckets he's trying to juggle. And when you look, and he was honest about it, you look at when we're tight on money, and you look at, as much as we'd love to do things, let's say at the transfer station, and the town is tight on money, and we have this new school that, we know we need, like, where does certain things fall within the highway department? But his guys are great. He gave me a tour. I mean, you could have eaten off the floors. Like, they've done a great job really keeping it clean. He says, after a storm, you walk in, it looks like a disaster, but then give these guys time to come back in, and everything is in its place. And so it was a great, a couple of hours. I love the one thing I wasn't aware. I love the pictures he has on the wall.
Are they fantastic?
Yeah, like if you've never had a chance to go to the highway department, along the walls they've captured various projects that they've worked on, and they're all on these really nice canvases, and he's just like, listen, I'm not spending a lot of money, but, you know, it's like pride and joy for some of the projects, and you can recognize some of the projects when you walk along, so it's nice. I had a chance to meet with Jean, so it was good to talk, and, you know, certainly we know there's challenges going on based on the planning meeting that was last night, so I was sitting next to her is Jill, and I've talked to Jill as well, so getting a chance to talk to different citizens around town about the discussions that's been taking place with the challenges with parking, et cetera, up at State Hospital. All three of us had a chance to go to the Eagle Scout ceremony this past Saturday. Love those. Like I said, when I had a chance to address the two young men, those are that's one thing I didn't know I was getting involved in when I ran for selectman, and they're fun. You meet, you know, these young men and women and meet their families. I love the ceremonies, and there's more coming. I was told there's coming this May.
They're so well spoken too, the kids. It's just amazing when they make their remarks.
Yeah. Well, Dylan,
Very
I didn't
poised.
know Dylan did the flower boxes up at the State Hospital, so. And then when I was up there today, I actually looked and I'm like, oh, lo and behold, it does say it. I just missed it all along. And the Affordable Housing Trust met last Thursday. We're going to be meeting with Kathy Boyle. She's coming into our next meeting to review the survey results, give us some insight. They were, if I check this, from a funding perspective, I know that we've put in $15,000, I want to say, for a request for the town meeting. And the next step with the 441 project, we've approved it to a certain extent, and now they've passed the paperwork off, I believe.
Goes to DHCD, and they're waiting for information back from DHCD.
Okay. And then Newton was able, again, talking about Kathy Boyle, give us the update on what's happening with the group homes. And nothing overly urgent in the remainder of that meeting. We did get a chance to have cake with Sarah and Leo, so that was a nice event. I'm sorry you couldn't be there for that, but certainly respect why. And then I sat in the open law training session a week ago Monday. I thought it was great. I thought the gentleman that presented was super approachable. Like, he really ran at a nice pace, good questions, nice attendance by those that have been in various committees for a long time. And then, like, I know Jill, the dog control bylaw committee was there. Some of the new school building committee folks were there. So that was very good. And then I sat in the planning meeting last night via Zoom to listen to the dialogue. Certainly questions and concerns that I know are being addressed from different angles. So that, I believe, was a busy week. There's been weeks where I haven't done much. Well, the last two I've kept myself busy.
So I had my monthly office hours last Friday, the first Friday of the month, at the center from 9 to 10. And I had three people that showed up to talk about the Medfield State Hospital parking. We had a little informal brain storming about the parking there. Went to that open space recreation plan forum. I think that's an interesting process. I think that people in town might be very interested to follow that along. Went to our town planner, Sarah Raposa's going away party. At the Eagle Scout event for Dylan Corbett and Brandon Mack, I got to meet our new state representative, Marcus Vaughn. I hadn't met him until then, so that was nice. He's now my Facebook friend. So, went to the Trinity Medfield State Hospital.
Singular Facebook friend, or just one of your Facebook friends?
I'm sorry, what?
One of your Facebook friends, or just your one?
Well, he
Facebook
he reached out to me to become a Facebook friend. Why, he didn't friend you after
I just
that?
wondered. He did, but I have multiple friends. He said he was your Facebook friend.
It's a tough crowd.
And then I did attend the planning board hearing about the Trinity project last night. And Eileen, since you were mentioning about the Affordable Housing Trust, I was going to mention to you to follow up with this Two Life Communities outfit. There was information about them in the media this week because they're building a project in Newton called Opus for it's next to the Jewish Community Center on Winchester Street, I think. And it's going to be for moderate income seniors.
Can you-
Basically what we were trying to do at Hinckley South, but I don't know whether that's going to happen. We'll see. But these guys are doing it, and they're doing it in a big footprint. It's like 130 or 50 units or something.
Can you send me the link to that? Just blast me share the link from that website.
I'll
That'd be
email
great.
you the
Yeah,
link,
thanks.
Yeah. And that's it.
Okay, and then, in my case, so we shadowed each other on Sarah's farewell, the Eagle Court, those things were all great. And we've also, I think, in our own ways, have been having multiple discussions on the state hospital parking issue, so I'm more optimistic that we'll figure out a path forward on that after our in-depth discussion. Planning board hearing last night was good. It was a good hearing, a lot of good information, a lot of good stuff covered. I remain amazed that anybody has a business that specializes in things like taking on the complexity, uncertainties, and risk of something like redeveloping the Medfield State Hospital property. It remains as calm and responsive and thoughtful as they have been throughout this process, and even flexible, I'd say. I just look and it's like, to me, it's just trying to walk through a swamp full of alligators, and somehow or another you just figure you know how to deal with the alligators, because we're moving ahead. I'm happy to see we're moving ahead. Every time in the summer when I would go up for Bell Forge performance, even though there were no rehabilitated buildings, you could just walk through the quad and envision what I think, are going to wind up there with. That's going to be phenomenal. It's just unbelievable what we're going to have there, by way of just a top caliber living community, complemented by a top caliber arts and center. It's hard for me. I'm looking forward to like about 5 years from now when all the dust is settled, but I just remain in awe of it, and I have for a couple of years now, just because I can see what this can be. I did get one thing you guys didn't do. I signed up for the Mass Municipal webinar at noon today on managing social media. And that was kind of fun. The biggest learning I came away from was a feeling that we have pursued the correct policy of not having any social media, official social media channels as part of our town. The complications of record keeping and the rules, the things that they said you should do if you're going to be on social media in terms of audits and these archiving and things like that. It's like as far as I know, I'm the only one that's actually on Facebook in any visible way.
You will never see me engaged.
So I go there. It's not that nobody knows anything that's going on, and obviously it's like the schools are on Twitter. And I'm not even going to go deeper because Christine's smirking, which means we're on something I don't realize we're on. And my main point was...
Well, we have a Twitter account, right? So
yeah, I know we have Twitter. Yeah. My point was that what they basically said, so whether this applies or not, probably does if the town is on something, is that basically there should be a formally stated policy, there should be a formal documentation of the purpose of that social media platform that's sponsored by the town. There's decisions to make about whether it's a two-way platform or whether it's simply a one-way push-out. You do need archiving. They all recommended that you have archiving software, and they all said, I've been using it for 10 years. I've only needed it 3 times, but boy, was I glad I had it when I needed it. So I just kind of came out of that hour saying, the less we do of this, the better. If you want more of the details of what I picked up, I'll pass them on to you.
was there any comment about towns having like what we have, which I think is crazy controversial, is like concerned citizens of Medfield, where bogus information can be tossed out there and suddenly it becomes, because it's out there, it's now news?
But that's private.
That's
town,
private,
that's
okay.
right.
Well, I didn't know,
So
but
the-
if the town likes, like that has caused issues, shall we say,
Right.
so it's
So
kind
the
of the
town,
town issue.
yeah, so the concern says is not a town Facebook post, or even Friends of Medfield is not. The point that they made was that you, as a town, sponsoring a social media
Yeah.
site, you do not want to be using a site like that, because the people who control that site are not bound by records keeping and all these other things. So if you're going to be a town doing something like that, you want to be absolutely in control of that platform. And then when they got into all the archiving and everything that automatically goes up, for any of us that are individually doing things, there's a grayer zone between, well, you know, the question is, so does nobody have a right to a personal Facebook profile or you know, Twitter account? It's like, yes, you do. The trick is that if you're an elected official or a hired official, an employee, you have to be thoughtful, because there's sort of a gray zone when you comment on something. If that thing you're commenting on has some relationship to your official role.
Yes.
Not because your comment was officially a comment, and they were talking about a first grade teacher who said that she was actually like the first level of a reform school person, and she lost her job because basically you're an actual first grade teacher and you're basically saying your kids are convicts. And so she was probably being very dramatic in some, you know, personal channel, but you're accountable. You are a teacher, so when you say that, you kind of have to own it. So that's the place it's gray. But I kind of took it away and said the less social media, we officially sponsor the 10 foot. We are. All these people say they don't touch it with a 10-foot pole have a certain amount of wisdom in the decisions that they've made. On the other hand, it's an important way to have interaction, and they called that out too, that basically in a world where everybody's concerned about transparency and engagement and knowing that people are actually listening to them, I look at it that way, is that's actually one of the places where people are making a lot of comments.
Or creating fake news, one or the other.
Oh, that too. And sometimes they do fake news about the town, and sometimes when they do that, I will comment back on matters of fact.
And we don't have local newspapers any longer either, so there's a dearth of information, of reliable information.
Yeah, dearth of reliable. I said there's a wealth of information. It's just most of it's garbage. So anyway, it was actually a good webinar, and I think that's all I had. Just to close out, there were actions taken on bills and warrants for payments. I signed the vendor warrant dated 2/28/2023 last week when I was here. I also signed the payroll warrant dated 3/2/2023, which is primarily, all the teachers should be glad to know that I did that on a timely basis, so the checks didn't bounce or anything like that. That's all I have. Does anybody have any other items? All of these patient people who are here and stayed till the bitter end, anything that anyone needs to bring up? All right, entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Meeting is closed. Thanks for tuning in, if there's anybody left. I don't know if anybody's left.